Blake was right when he uttered, "No one is safe anymore." Hearing the heinous and horrific experience told back as tears trickled down his badly beaten face was both eye-opening and jaw-dropping. These are the things that you only thought you'd see in cinematic horror movies. Jody was absolutely petrified after hearing about the House of Horrors. Fossilized in fear, unable to move, and beginning to suffer from anxiety, she moaned, "I don't want to live in a world like this anymore. I don't want to envision myself being a pawn to a predator. I don't want to have to wonder if I'll have to trade sex for food or shelter." As repulsive and appalling as selling your body for survival sounds, when the bloodbath of doomsday kicks off, humans will find themselves doing all kinds of things they never previously considered. I did my best to reassure and comfort her in her frazzled and shattered state. I told her, as long as I'm breathing, I will never let you fall victim to such vile and repulsive atrocities. Blake muttered, "Don't make promises you can't keep. We're currently living in a dystopian nightmare. I watched my daughter have her brains blown out right in front of me. I was forced to watch unthinkable, despicable, and abhorrent acts of sexual assault being repeated day after day on my family. My wife was coerced into severing my fingers off. This is a sick, wicked world, and only the strongest will survive," he said. Blake's words did nothing but add to the burden and distress that was overwhelming Jody's petite frame. "I killed one of those bastards, and if it's the last thing I do, I promise I will execute and terminate the remaining 3 scumbags too. I know you will, Blake, and I will help you complete that mission, but we need you to get better first." "No way," Blake shouted. "My daughter is dead, and my wife can't afford for me to fully recover. We strike tonight, and we let the bodies hit the floor." I knew he was right. His wife was living on borrowed time, but he was in no condition for anything strenuous, let alone a well-planned and coordinated attack. "Listen, brother," I said. "I will go myself tonight and avenge your daughter's death. Terminate the threat and bring back your wife." It would be a tall order for a combat-experienced vet to pull off, never mind me being a seasoned cable guy to conduct. "Nope. Negative. Not happening. I will not lay here and let some other man be my wife's hero," Blake exclaimed. "If I have to crawl the entire 2 miles through a foot of snow, that's what I'll do. I promise to be her protector, her provider, to have and to hold, for better or worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until we are parted by death. And as bad as I look, I'm not dead yet, Brian. I'm hell-bent on vengeance and retribution. I will not sleep until I know she's safe, and those 3 are riddled with bullet holes, and are being preyed upon and picked apart by hungry animals." Blake sat up for the first time, trying to gather himself from the barrage of multiple injuries, including the catastrophic concussion he endured. A pulsing, beating sensation reverberating up through his cauterized stubs that used to be his left pinky and ring fingers. As dreadful as he looked, the adrenaline was pumping through his veins, and I knew he would not sit by willingly and voluntarily as I marched 2 miles in the darkness to unleash purgatory, agony, and torture on the 3 remaining ravengers. I'd have to tie him up and lock him up to keep him from joining me on a possible suicide mission. Restraining and impeding a man who witnessed unspeakable savagery, done to not only him but his family as well, was something I couldn't fathom doing. If that was me in his shoes, I'd feel the same rage and thirst for revenge he did. Jody eavesdropped on our conversation while preparing Blake a warm plate of the same meal she had prepared for us. "At least eat something to help provide you with some energy," she told Blake. It had been over 80 hours since his now malnourished and maltreated body had consumed any calories. He went from enjoying generous portions of venison to being starved, famished, and tormented as a prisoner of the ruinous apocalypse in his own house. He gazed lifelessly into the heaping hot plate of spaghetti, showing no interest in replenishing his body with crucial calories. No doubt, still preoccupied with bearing the burden of abandoning his bride as she was held captive as a hostage in the residence of ungodly evil. "You gotta eat, brother," I said to Blake as I looked down at his frostbitten feet. "I'll go retrieve some gear for you while you do." He didn't respond, nor acknowledge the words I had just spoken, as his attention had now turned to the bandage job Jody and I had performed on his deformed and mangled left hand. Concerned about his obvious shaken and fragile mental state, I kneeled down carefully, putting both hands on his head to direct his shell-shocked eyes into mine, and reassured him that he's alive and his wife was too. "We're going to go rescue her and make sure justice is served. I need you to please eat something, and I'll gather the necessary supplies, gear, and resources we will need to be successful on our mission." He finally nodded in approval and stuck his fork into the spaghetti, carefully twirling it as the pasta wrapped around it. He needed socks, clothing, boots, and a weapon of war before we could launch our attack and head out the door. I whispered to Jody to keep an eye on him while I went upstairs to collect the necessities needed. I opened the door to Jim's apartment and stepped out into the blackness that was the chilly hallway, deciding to inform him of the plan as he was still stationed outside running OPSEC. I slowly pushed the main door ajar, being careful not to startle him. We were all agitated and on edge since Blake had shown up just hours before, thrashed, pummeled, and maimed. Jim quietly muttered, "How is he?" as he removed his winter hat to shake the accumulating snow off it from the persistent and relentless bands that continued to fall. "He's hanging in there, all things considered," I answered. "We're going to his house tonight to extract revenge and hopefully extricate his wife from the 3 remaining predators." "You're going to do what?" Jim carelessly shouted, out of frustration and anger. "Are you fucking crazy or just plain stupid?" he asked. He's in no shape for such a foolish and asinine ploy. 3 hours ago, he was unconscious and comatose at our front door. Now you two are going to risk life and limb on a self-slaughter mission in hopes of assassinating 3 vicious, violent, cold-blooded monsters, he asked. "I understand your concern and skepticism, Jim. I do. Trust me, it's not something I want to do, but we really have no choice. Imagine if that was Jody, confined and imprisoned, being violated repeatedly. His wife is on borrowed time, and now with her husband MIA, I'm sure they're taking it out on her right now." "If you're not going to reconsider, at least let me go with you, Brian," Jim stated. "We can't afford to leave Jody all alone here," I retorted. "There's unholy evil lurking and preying upon unsuspecting people. We have ferocious savages holed up way too close to our home. God forbid they show up at our door when Jody's all alone. I need you to stay here with her and protect what's ours and what's yours, Jimmy. I don't like this proposal you have. I've got a bad feeling about it. But I understand," Jim declared. "How soon before you leave?" he asked. "Within the hour. I'm headed up to my place to grab gear, clothing, and enough firepower to level and eradicate a small army. We'll have our walkies, and we'll stay in contact with you and Jody. It's approximately a 2-mile trek to his residence to the northeast. His house sits on 2 acres on Route 33. If all goes to plan, I hope to return with him and his wife by daybreak tomorrow morning." In all honesty, I thought to myself, nothing ever goes to plan in Doomsday. The rapture is ruthless, unforgiving, and most of all, unpredictable. "Why hoof it on foot, especially with Blake's condition?" Jim questioned. "I'd feel better knowing if you and Jody had to quickly evacuate, you have a set of wheels to use. Plus, take a look around, Jimmy. 2 weeks into the fall of humanity with impassable snow-blocked roads, you don't see many vehicles navigating this dark, spine-chilling world. We're better off on foot, and a 4-wheel drive truck just puts a giant target on us. 14 days in, and people are desperate, desolate and dangerous. 10 minutes after telling both Jody and Blake I was going to retrieve supplies, I left Jim outside, returning into the darkness as I quietly kicked my boots off on the ledge of the entrance to remove the snow from them. I clicked the button on my Olight Warrior flashlight and navigated the 2 flights of stairs, making my way to my unit. Opening the door, I shined the light on my battery-powered weather center to check the time and temperature, as I always did upon entry. 29 degrees and 9:42 p.m., I said to myself. The realization of this mission was hitting hard as I gathered reserves. I was anxious, uneasy, and fearful of what the night would bring. I knew death was an insurance for some, but I hoped and prayed Blake and I would be able to evade it. I was Jim and Jody's best chance of surviving the collapse. As bad as things were, I dreaded the thought of leaving this gruesome and grisly existence. I couldn't help but think about Jody's nightmarish thought of having to sell her body to survive in this dystopian society. Her and Jim were my family now, and it was imperative I survive the night so I could make it home to them tomorrow. I stepped into my bedroom and then into my walk-in closet to pick out the proper winter clothing to layer Blake's body with. Anything colored in black to help us camouflage ourselves in the sinister darkness of the apocalyptic night. Next, I grabbed the keys to my stack-on 18 firearm capacity security gun safe to be able to arm him with enough firepower to be able to elicit and extract vengeance on the vicious and vile predators. I inserted the key into the hole and slowly turned it to the right as my hands trembled with nerves. The lock disengaged, and the battery-powered motion detector light illuminated the inside of the safe as the door swung open. The top shelf held my remaining hard cash that by now was most likely only good for toilet paper. Next to that was my stockpile of American Eagle, and Maple Leaf 1-ounce silver dollars. I held out hopes that if a barter society was ever established, I'd be able to flip them for life-changing, morale-boosting supplies. I'd been stacking silver going on 6 years now, often purchasing 1 to 2 ounces every month. After allocating my 3 neighbors with weapons of survival, all that was left in my safe was my 12-gauge Mossberg 500 Tactical, the first firearm I ever purchased, and my backup AR-15 Daniel Defense, chambered in .556. I grabbed both weapons, laying them on my bed, and returned to my closet to supply myself with enough ammunition to carry out the perilous and unpredictable mission. I had 3 remaining standard capacity 20-round New York State non-compliant magazines left. The Mossberg 500 Tactical held 5 in the tube and 1 in the chamber. The side saddle mount held 5, and the sling I put on held another 25 shells. I alternated rounds between buckshot and slugs. The odds of us being wounded or worse yet slaughtered and deceased were greater than us discharging and exhausting over 300 rounds of various calibers of ammunition we were bringing. At 9:55 p.m., 2 weeks after the cataclysmic and devastating coronal mass ejection hurtled at Earth in speeds of excess of 2,500 kilometers per second, and the country's power grid that 300+ million were so dependent on vaporized, multiple gunshots echoed throughout the darkness of the dingy, obscure, dim December night. The sound of glass shattering and imploding reverberated off neighboring buildings. Jody let out a wailing and squealing shriek as more projectiles began to now impale and pierce the drywall in Jim's apartment below me. The saint of death, the ghostly Grim Reaper, had now brought war to our front door.